In the news this week, Clive Palmer to keep the Liberals out, the impact of the border challenge has on the state election.
Refugee rights activists call out Australia's asylum policies for major systemic issues.
Top doctor warns vigilance about COVID-19 amid concerns of a potential second wave in WA.
And on Western Perspective, the constitutional issues on the WA's strict border. What are the real chances of the border falling?
This is the Evening News with Ivan Malone and Sarah Smith.
Good evening. As Clive Palmer's High Court challenge to the WA hard border kicks off this week, political observers say there may be a good chance of a Palmer victory. A WA News poll on the matter revealed the surprising effect a successful challenge would have on the state election. Helene Fong with the exclusive details.
A WAMN poll this week shows that a successful Clive Palmer High Court challenge to WA's hard borders would make West Aussies less likely to vote Liberal at the next election.
Labor, is going to stay ahead for a long time in Western Australia. So Scott Morrison needs to be careful and he needs to be gentle in the way he approaches it. Because if he comes in as a strong man, tough guy, pushing WA around, Mark McGowan will use that to smash the WA Liberals.
Political expert Ian Cook says that he thinks there is a good chance the High Court will force WA's borders to open again.
There's nothing in the Constitution that I can see that gives the state government the capacity to shut its borders.
Ex-Southern River Liberal MP Peter Abez says that the closed borders might become a liability for McGowan.
I guess only time will tell to what impact it might have on the state election, but I believe that we need to put a bit more humanity around the closed borders.
He says reports of people unable to cross the border to visit dying relatives, even with protective measures in place, might change public opinion.
I think as more and more of those stories start to filter out into the public domain, I think that the popularity of the iron-fisted way of closing the border is going to start waning.
Meanwhile, WA Premier Mark McGowan and Attorney General John Quigley urges Clive Palmer to stop the legal action.
I'm very grateful the Commonwealth has pulled out. Obviously this was a very unfortunate episode, but we're proceeding on the basis the border will stay in place and we will fight Mr Palmer in the High Court. Mr Palmer should withdraw.
Helene Fong, WAMN News.
The Australian Medical Association in WA has warned the state not to be complacent following a record spike in COVID-19 cases in Victoria. They've said vigilance is still needed to protect the state.
Concern remained about a second wave reaching the state following a challenge over opening WA's borders after Victoria reached a record high number of cases this week. President Dr. Andrew Miller says WA need to take more stock in preparation for a health crisis if it reaches here.
We need to have a close look at what's happening in Victoria and understand the levers they're using that are not working, and we need to decide what levers we're going to use here when we do see an outbreak. And I think we need to take a very close look at aged care in Western Australia to see if the private aged care sector is any better prepared than it is over there.
New developments into the Tamil family refugee situation have seen Mother Priya sent back to Christmas Island after receiving medical treatment in Perth. People gathered this week for the Home to Bilo protests. The Refugee Rights Action Network is demanding the government bring the family back to their home in Biloela, Queensland. Taylor Hanna has the details.
The Home to Bilo campaign protesting against the detention of the Tamil family highlights issues surrounding Australia's refugee policies. The family sought refuge in Australia several years ago and found a home in a small Queensland town. The Australian Border Force took Priya, Nades and their young Queensland-born daughters from their home and placed them in detention, and for the last 10 months have been held on Christmas Island. Last week, Priya was flown to Perth to receive medical care she could not receive on the island, and after treatment and testing, Priya was sent back to detention.
The medical symptoms that she was experiencing have been diagnosed, or she's been told it's the result of detention fatigue. Those medical issues are only going to remain or be exacerbated, so she's not going to get better under those circumstances.
The Refugee Rights Action Network said they are concerned for her well-being and demand the federal government to release the family back to their home community.
I think it's also a reflection of this system more broadly. While we've heard a lot about this family, they're not the only family who are facing these or similar circumstances, so I think there are systemic issues that also need to be resolved in order to prevent this from continuing.
I think we've seen from successive immigration ministers under all forms of federal government that there is a lack of compassion and that there's a lack of understanding about the genuine lived experience.
Protesters are calling for the government to change its approach to people seeking asylum and welcome those who are in dire need of their support. Taylor Hanna, WAMN News.
WA police are calling for a 33-year-old father of two to hand himself in after a crime spree that ended with a torch house in Hocking. Jared Adams allegedly threatened people with a hammer while fleeing the scene in the car rolled over on Monday this week. He then allegedly broke into a nearby home and started a fire before stealing the family's Jeep, which was later found burning in Nowegarup. Those who are close to Adams says the string of incidents is out of character for the man and concern for his health.
Jared, we know you will be worried about your actions and missing your young family. Your friends and family are worried about you. Please hand yourself in to any police station or police officer so we can get this issue resolved and you can move forward with your life.
Investments into defence, port infrastructure and serviced land will get a boost after the government announced a $300 million investment as part of the WA recovery plan. The investment will be utilised to create jobs, boost the economy, establish new business and research facilities and stimulate major infrastructure and construction. Premier Mark McGowan called it a key part of the state's recovery journey, creating 600 jobs. The infrastructure and planning upgrades will facilitate further growth in commercial and industrial precincts, as well as our defences, manufacturing, resources, exports and marine sectors.
This project has been talked about for a long period of time. We're getting on, we're doing it, and we're doing it in a way that creates jobs during construction, but then jobs after we finish in manufacturing and industrial work.
Progress is on the way for the state government's Metronet Forestfield Airport link, with the track currently being prepared for the project. Track laying has already begun, with 1 kilometre of track already laid in place for what the state government will name the airport link. The McGowan government says it's a significant first step that will mean a boost of jobs.
Now we're actually laying the track and we'll be then putting in the overhead wires. So our target completion and commencement date is the end of next year, and of course this rail line not only was targeting visitors and tourists but also the general population.
A rare rebuke from elected Republicans has followed a suggestion by US President Donald Trump that the November election might need to be delayed. Unfounded voter fraud claims prompted the president's suggestion. Members of Trump's own party have distanced themselves from the comments, saying the election would take place on its constitutionally mandated date. Meanwhile, there are calls for Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to resign amid a corruption inquiry. In a video testimony, Trudeau said family connections played no role in awarding a lucrative government contract to We Charity. It's a non-profit that has previously paid tens of thousands of dollars in speaking fees to members of the Prime Minister's family.
The brightest comet to appear in the sky in 24 years will be visible from Perth tonight. Those who missed the spectacle will have to wait for another 6,800 years before Neowise reappears. The comet was discovered on the 27th of March by a Near-Earth Object Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer. According to NASA, it's rare for a comet to be bright enough to see with the naked eye. The last time there was a comet this bright was in 1996. The comet will be most visible at around 6:30 p.m. tonight, low near the northwest horizon, with beaches and lookouts away from city lights giving the best view of the comet. And that's our weekly news and current affairs. For news anytime, you can visit our website and social media pages.
See you next weekend and have a good evening.
Wish you good health and take care.